What's up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of Water for the Thirsty, where we are here to discuss the Word of God, the Word simply, the Word refreshing. Here with us tonight, we got the usual crew. While my jacket falls off the chair, Lauren, Courtney, Kenrick, and Jerome. So we are here.
Rome and Rome.
Rome. Yeah. That always feels awkward in my mouth. I just want you to know, Jerry, you make that very hard for me. You're all grown man with a beard and thing, but gosh. Anyway, yeah, man, we are regular folks who study in the Word, trying to get closer to Jesus, trying to make this walk meaningful in a real and a practical way, and we are trying to do it sola scriptura for the most part, um, allowing the Word of God to kind of guide and direct along with the Spirit. So we follow a Bible reading plan, and which you can download and join us and read with us from the App Store. And we kind of talk about what we discovered, what we read, what we wrestled with, what bothered us, what amused us, what interest us, and what we weren't sure about. And we process that. So today our readings will be coming from the books of Acts, because we are reading the writings of Luke. So we're doing Luke Acts to start the year. So we're right now in the book of Acts. We finished the book of Proverbs. We're into Kenrick's book, the favorite book, most favorite book.
I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna do a couple chapters this year.
Okay, yeah, it's most favorite
I haven't
book.
done it yet.
And we're now in Exodus, because of course we begin in the beginning of the year in the Old Testament. So yeah, that's where our conversation is going to be coming from, and we're going to chop it up. Kenrick, would you like to kick us off, lead us off, or would you defer today?
So I'll defer. Well, I was reading earlier, and I think we've had this conversation before. But even when I like Exodus, and even today, so I like Exodus. Period. Um, I like the journey that the children of Israel go through, even though it's very frustrating to read. Um, Even then, even going through that, I realized that
Hold
I
on.
see a lot,
Why is it frustrating for you?
because I was going to say it's frustrating because I think, when you see the big picture, you're like, like it's really not this complicated, guys. You just saw this dude do this, and you saw this guy do this, and you're here and now. But this week, as I was reading, I kind of got caught up in, and I was like, you kind of do the same thing. And I saw a lot of myself, even like when I'm in situations, you don't have the privilege of seeing the end when you're in the situation.
Okay.
Right. And so it seems like you don't know how long you're going to be in it. Who knows how long, you're going to be hungry? Who knows how long you're going to be thirsty? All of those things. And, one of the things I was kind of paying attention, these were all, it's not like they're like, oh man, I want this job to come through, or I want this, like they were like, these were actual some needs that you have as a human being, like very basic. I want to eat. I want to,
Drink water.
drink water, right? There are all these various things that you go through. And I was, where me, I think some of the things I get frustrated with, or like when I'm going through and I may be impatient, those things are very temporal, right? And so I had to kind of check myself a little bit on that. So that was kind of my, as I was reading this week, that was kind of the thing that stood out to me. Nothing specific. It was just more, as I was progressing through the chapter, in usual, typically I'm very frustrated, and I started out frustrated until I started actually thinking about myself.
So this is the first time you're seeing yourself?
I probably saw it before. I just didn't really think about it and dwell on it. But this week I've also I've been very intentional about spending quiet time early in the morning, and not just praying, but actually trying to listen. Um, for time afterwards of following my prayers, and so I think all of that actually starts quieting the noise, and you start realizing you're the problem.
Mm.
So that's it, I think, in my opinion.
No, I think that's a good lead into the question that I had from lingering. That was lingering. So I'm grateful for that. Um, let's go to the Luke 14, 1-6. I know it's a little bit before Acts, but we still read Luke Acts. So just say it's all one chapter. We're just going back a little bit because we read Luke before, now we're in Acts. Luke 14, 1-6. And the question I want to ask before we read it, or maybe we can read it and I'll ask the question. Karen, go ahead and you can read Luke 14, 1-6.
All right, I'll read. All right, I'm reading out the NIV. So one Sabbath, when Jesus went to eat in the house of a prominent Pharisee, he was being carefully watched. There in front of him was a man suffering from abnormal swelling of his body. And Jesus asked the Pharisees and experts in the law, is it lawful to heal on the Sabbath or not? But they remained silent. So taking hold of the man, he healed him and sent him on his way. Then he asked them, if one of you has a child or an ox that falls into a well on the Sabbath day, will you not immediately pull it out? And they had nothing to say.
So a question I had from this, that I think your statement about seeing yourself in it is, why is detecting equivalency such a challenge? What do you think are the barriers from them seeing the equivalency between their child or their ox falling in the pit and Jesus healing the man on the Sabbath? What prevents us from making that equivalency? Let's take another example. David being told the story of the man who took the other man's sheep and cook it and feed it to his friends who came to visit.
Mm-hmm.
Why was he so? What's the challenge in seeing the relationship between that and what David did?
I think this is my opinion. I've heard people say things that are opposite of this, or contrary to this. So, but I think that most people see themselves better than who they are. I've heard people say the exact opposite. But I think most people see themselves, or at least want to view themselves, better than they are. In their heads. I think also on the contrary to that, I think on the flip side, I think some people may not necessarily verbally, say that they're better they are, but I think that most people view themselves better than they are. And so because of that, I think it distorts the view.
No, that's people. Why didn't you see yourself before?
Oh, because I suck as a person. So for me, so my family knows this. I am 100%. I'm a judger. I shouldn't say judger. I will critique you constructively.
Of course.
Right? It's all constructive criticism. Right? It comes with love, maybe a little kiss at the end, all of that. You suck. Right? It's
as long as you don't say well.
Exactly.
And then you do all right.
Yeah. No,
Sorry.
No, it's all constructive criticism. And so for me, it's and I think for a lot of people, it's very easy for me to see what you're doing wrong. In the Bible, Jesus spoke about it, right? The beam in your eye and all that kind of stuff, right? Um, for that's me. And so going back to what I was saying earlier, it was the quietness, right? And kind of shutting everything else down and kind of thinking about what was read and talking to God about, who I am and just listening, that I was able to kind of get, hold on, this is kind of you. You're that guy. So that's my 2 cents.
What do you guys think?
I think
Noreen?
I agree with what Kenrick's saying. I think to add to it, like the ox thing, I think too, a lot of times we don't see stuff unless it affects us. So when it affects other people, so like allowing the guy to walk didn't affect them. So it's like, don't do that on the Sabbath. But if it's your ox and your money that's at risk, you're like, no, let's fix this. Let's handle it now because it's my money. But for
Very
somebody
true.
else, like, oh well, or like we talk about like people getting persecuted. It's like, oh yeah, they're it's happening over there. But when it hits home, it's like, wait a minute now, hold on. Time out.
Right.
So I feel like it's just different. When it hits home, you see it. But when it's affecting other people, a lot of times you don't.
So allow me to push. Why is that? Why doesn't it bother you unless it hits home? Why is the ox and the child different from the sick man? I get that,
Because we're selfish beings. That's we we're tend to be numero uno. Like, how does this affect me? What about my life? Like, even when we talk about the stuff we go through in life, like, why does this happen to me? Like, sometimes not about you, but I'm not okay with it not being about me. I need it to be about me. I need you to tell me why this thing is happening to me because I need an answer
But
for
we've had
why.
we've
Go
had
ahead.
this conversation. We've had this conversation here, right? And just how selfish and inward looking um, Western Christianity, um, and you even listen to the gospel songs. Like it's even now, like it's very inward and selfish in the way we go about it and living, and telling this whole gospel, right? It is very much about us and how we are and how we feel. And you hear the sermons and everything. So I think it's part of this, just like it's been cultivated in us as a society where you see it's much different in other societies that are more community oriented. Literally, if you hurt, I hurt. I struggle with that. If you hurt, I may hurt. So I don't know, maybe depends, right? Yeah, it's just I think our Christianity is very selfish. So I do agree. It's like we're very inward in the way we view things and people and all that.
Hmm. Jerry, what do you think? Why do we have a hard time detecting equivalency?
Part of it is definitely that
Let me ask it this way.
that
Let me add this imagery before you answer. I know it might be a little sensitive. I'm gonna keep it because I just realized it might be a little insensitive. So I'm gonna keep it. I'm gonna keep it. I'm gonna keep it.
Really?
All right. Nobody take it personal.
So all comments, Jared
I
at
just use a powerful illustration.
waterforthethirsty.com. All comments go to.
yeah.
Nobody take this personally. It doesn't have
Disclaimer.
anything to do with anybody in here. It's just a question, right?
Right.
Don't water it. If it fall in your garden, don't wet it. All right. This time, don't wet it.
This one time.
Yeah.
Just
Why is having an extramarital affair worse than not fulfilling your marital vow or denying the needs of your spouse or your partner? why do we have a difficulty detecting the equivalency there? Why do we have a challenge detecting equivalency?
Because one's a commandment, and one is just best practices advised.
And that's what I was gonna. That's something I wanted to touch on. There's this hierarchical approach we take to things that would allow us to feel better about our own historicity. So, if I am one of those Christians who never gone to these wilding out concerts, never been to a strip club, I pay my tithe, all the stuff that I don't do is kind of like the hierarchical lens through which I look at everything. So, like the Pharisee, I thank you, Lord, I'm not like them. And all the other stuff that they're doing, it's like, oh no, that's why they're, because for Jesus it didn't matter. He died for the guy who stole candy, he died for the rapist, he died for the murderer, he died for the pedophile. But it's hard to swallow that, right? And we want to think that, well, since these are the things I am good at, and these are the things that I can, with pride stick my chest out on, then yeah, I'm good, I'm solid. Everybody else, not so much.
Can I add? Oh, okay. I was just going to add to that when you're looking outward and you're not looking at yourself, it requires change. When I point the spotlight on me, it requires that I have to make some adjustments and some changes that I might not be comfortable with, or I may not want to deal with at the time. So it's easy for me to look at you and see your faults and the needs that you have in a way that you should change, because it's just a word. But if I then look at myself as being the adulterer or the person that wants to pull the ox out of the pit, then that requires me to have to make some adjustments that, like Jerome said, fall short of the hierarchical yeah, that
one. Yeah.
Right. It falls short of that. So I'm just going to add change to that definition.
What do you think, Courtney? Any additional thoughts?
I agree. I think that sin can lead to a deadening of your moral perceptions in a sense. So it's like you can have like a partial, like everyone's been saying, like a partial brightness to your own sin. So now you can't even realize the enormity of your own sin, I guess. So again, everyone's saying it's like you can see others more than you can see yours. It's not as big. Your own is not even as significant maybe as others.
If I start to see myself more in others, what do you think that does for the way I relate to them?
Repeat that again.
If I can see the equivalency more, right?
Mm-hmm.
In the people who are doing wrong, that I see myself in them. Do you think it changes the way I would relate to them, deal with them, approach them?
100%.
For sure.
Absolutely.
More humility, more humanity, because it's
more mercy, more grace.
Yep. I mean, I think you very often hear, especially if you come from a conservative Christian background, that we come across aloof, and we come across, it's like, it's what is that thing about iPhone and Android users? It's it's us and them, and we can kind of like snub our noses at them, right? And I think that's why the scripture is so clear to keep our eyes. If we're measuring ourselves against anybody, it should be against Christ. Because the minute you start, this guy did this, and slippery slope, right?
I mean,
do you guys compare yourself? Like, do you fall into that personally?
I don't think I do it intentionally. I might do it subconsciously, but I don't think
you kind of like slip into it sometimes, right?
Yeah, like I don't think I'm not out there just comparing that's not me naturally, but I'm pretty sure subconsciously there are times where I do that. Like, and I'll catch the thought, and I'll be like, wait.
Yeah. Get on that moral high horse.
Yeah, like,
yeah.
wait a minute. Yeah, and I think too, like, you, like, when we look at other people doing X, Y, Z, and we're like, oh yeah, they could have just, and why didn't they? And they should have, and could have, and would have. And then when you get in that situation yourself, you're like, okay.
I get it. I get it now.
I get it now. I understand. I see why that choice was an option. Because even then, you sometimes you even make worse choices following that same experience. You're like, man. And then you know, some will go back and say sorry, and some will just be like,
yeah.
That's interesting.
I like that you said that, and I like, because it ties into where we started with Kenrick. You know, we've been doing this thing for a while, and you know, one of the things you hear and people reading the Bible is, how could they do that? If I was there, I would not. And people are always so removed from the experiences of other people, like somehow they are different from me. And one of the things that's challenging for me is the real difference is the how, right? It's not the what, it's the how. Like, and you see it. Here's another example that's, you know, off to the left so that you can picture it. At churches, we get caught up in how we do service, and if we do it this way, we're doing it right, and if we don't do it that way, we're not doing it right. We get caught in the forms, and we are, you know, if we're going to sit, it has to be a sofa. A chair just won't work. A stool is out of the question, right?
It's not reverent.
It has to be, and we miss the fact of, well, what do you need? What you need to sit? Like, what are the obstacles that prevent us from distinguishing functions from forms, or the how from the what? Because that's, I think, one of the challenges that's happening here. And we could talk about it in sins and whatnot, but I think the problem is bigger than just detecting wrong. It's detecting equivalency, finding what is the equivalency here. And is this different because it's two different whats, or is it different because it's two different hows? And what are the barriers that prevent us from being able to do that?
I think the barriers are people. Like, it's just us, right? I mean, you go through, and, you know, it's generations. It's the way things were. I mean, you don't do it this. I mean, I think it's just people, and you find it not just in church or religion. You find it in industry. You find it all, families. Like, you find. I think the common denominator is just people.
Okay, well, after this weekend, right? Why do people want to be distinct from other people?
Because we like lying to ourselves. It's the same people that, you know, that want to be different, but that go, you know, buying clothes off the rack, right? A million other people have the same thing you have. That's how this company makes money, but you're different. Like, it's just we fool ourselves into all these different things. But it's just people.
Yeah, but so Kenrick, there's a point you made about societies and kind of how we're wired now, right? And I mean, it's like, to me, it seems like more of a Western culture thing, because, you know, like, when you look at it doesn't matter the denomination, just the church in general. You know, it could be Islam, it could be whatever. How they grow in the Eastern world, in Africa, in Asia, these people will go meet and have their service, have a mosque under a tree, or, you know, a roof with a house with a thatched roof. It doesn't matter. What matters is the experience, not the mechanics of it, right? But across in the West, everything is like, you know, to your point, okay, no, the seat has to be like this,
So
it has to be in this position, and it's
sorry, go ahead. Go ahead.
No, and that's the thing. So it seems like such a societal thing on this side of the world, where, again, everything is about the mechanics of it. It's not about the substance, it's all mechanics.
I would say even in those cultures, they also struggle with the how from the what too, but they do it differently in different things in terms of dress and
Okay.
let's use the other example, propriety, modesty. Modesty has to be this particular outfit and that particular outfit, right? It has to look like this. So we all tend to take practices and then codify them and be 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 unable to distinguish the practice from the intent or the outcome or the purpose, right?
Is it a first commandment thing, you think? So it's like we still have this desire to be gods some way,
I
somehow.
don't.
So it's like we're creating our own standards and everybody has to live up to adhere to this standard, and then I don't know.
Right.
I
One
don't.
thought.
I've never looked at it from that perspective. I've always seen it as I think that there there are people that survive better within fences because it's established codes, it's established rules, and we're all different, right? I don't really deal with rules well, right? Rules are very functional to me. Like if it makes sense and da 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 da, like that's fine. I'm not out to break rules. Do they make sense to accomplish whatever I'm doing? If they don't make sense, then let's figure out some way to actually make sense of this thing and accomplish whatever the goal is. And I think some people have to. My older daughter, functions within rules. If it's, you got to wear a blue shirt, like the shirt's got to be blue. Can't be, and it has to be whatever blue she thinks blue is. It can't be another type of blue. If that's not what her blue is, and I think some people operate that way. And I don't think that's necessarily them wanting to play God. I think it's just some people need these confinements to operate and feel like they are accomplishing whatever the mission is. So within religion, it's honoring and reverencing God. Within whatever else it is, I think it's, for me, I think a lot of people are that simple. There probably are some people that are like, you know, it may be a first commandment thing, but I think most people, I think people try to function within and do what they're supposed to do within the confinements of something because it's easier to operate within rules.
And I
I
think
know.
That's interesting.
I think we get those guidelines from our. I think I had a similar conversation before somewhere else, where we operate within what we grew up in. Like sometimes not so much you're just creating these rules. Like this is how you. This is your beat. This is how you were nurtured and taught, and it's ingrained. So, I gave the example in my other conversation. How I was always told you dressed your best at church. So that means the skirt, the suit, the whatever. Um, but for me, as I got older, like we've been talking about relationship, it's all about relationship. As I got older, I realized that my focus became what am I wearing to church? Am I looking my best? And it wasn't even like best anymore. It was more like fashion statement, like who's coming with what and who's wearing what, and oh, you look nice today, and all that kind of stuff. And so I decided in myself that I'm gonna start wearing hoodies and t-shirts and jeans because my focus is no longer coming to church. You know what I mean? It was clothes and if I didn't have clothes, I had clothes, but if I didn't have clothes, I didn't feel like I should go to church that day. Like I don't have anything to wear to church. And so I decided, look, hoodies and t-shirts. And then if I come to church with hoodies and t-shirts, like what's wrong? What's going on with her? Is she going through it? Like is she It's like it's just my relationship with God told me that I'm too focused on my clothes and I need to just start being casual. I might wear a dress, I might wear a hoodie and t-shirt, I might wear whatever, but that was me to maintain this versus all of this.
So
So
so we lose sight of what's important. That's what one of the things I'm hearing. We lose sight of what's important. Um, we think more highly of ourselves, or we have a false sense of self. Um, what are some other things that you guys said? I'm just trying to collate them. try to. All right. Let me take a comment from Vanessa then. He says, lying to ourselves is often the base of our lies to others. In my response to the question about the how, she says, the how is what impacts us more directly. We feel more direct and the immediate effects of the how. So it's about how it impacts us. I think somebody made that comment before. And that's the impact us directly. What is revealed when we pause and analyze a situation. Also, the what often requires wisdom and the desire to understand the what. And then we have a comment from Wakita who says, I agree. One of the reasons I'm wrestling with this is that, particularly when it comes to how we treat people and the experiences that we have, we always tell ourselves, or we often tell ourselves, that my situation is somehow worse than yours. And my situation is the worst in the world. And and it's a orientation of me that makes me either feel better about me or makes me put you down. And if I don't see you as somehow the same to me, it allows me to be, I guess, elevated. It really,
that's all we do. 100%.
Like elevation of self. That really all that it is. And why that's challenging is that one of the things that's coming out to me about the gospel is that it's attempting to flatten us out and help us see that we are literally all the same. And when we read the Bible, I think one of the beauties of the Bible is that it is not a story about the children of Israel. It's a story about us. We are them. They are us. Change the setting and the costumes. The stories are all the same. I mean, the reason we can enjoy, Bollywood movies is because the stories are about people, and people are essentially the same.
You enjoy Bollywood movies?
I move any
Bollywood movies are good. I like Bollywood movies.
Right now, them Koreans killing on Netflix.
Outside of the poor acting and whatever.
Sometimes that is the part of the there's a movie on Netflix called Bahubali. That movie, check it out. Bahubali.
What's it called again?
Bahubali.
I'm putting in the chat. Yeah. Sound like a B at the beginning and an I at the end. Yeah, that's all I got.
H-U Bahubali. B-A-H-U.
Bahubali.
Yeah.
On Netflix?
On Netflix.
All right, I'll watch it.
As an epic. Now, let me say it before you go into it. The CGI could be a whole lot better, right?
CGI's horrible in Bollywood movies. It's horrible.
But Bahubali is wow. I got sucked in. I couldn't help myself.
Like, man, they produced this at AYS?
I guess my point is, like, why don't we see ourselves as other people equivalent to us? Why are you different to me? Why do we distinguish ourselves like that?
You said it.
Yeah, we said it. Yeah.
Okay.
And I think when I was like we were talking about the stories and seeing ourselves, I think I can see myself initially I could see myself in all stories except Adam and Eve.
Except what? Adam and Eve?
Yeah, because that one for me was hard to put myself, because I was like, everything was perfect though. Like,
man, if you don't go outside and get some maple leaves.
But I feel like it's just like what Kendrick said earlier. Like Kendrick said it perfectly. It's like you can see the story from the beginning to the end. So that's probably another reason why we don't see ourselves. Like you see the result. So you're just like, and that's what I think sometimes happens with us when we see other people that maybe falling on hard times, going through unfortunate things. We're seeing the result. We didn't see the steps and choices that led up to it.
Agreed, Courtney.
Correct.
And I'm going to
go ahead. It's a chapter.
I was just going I was just going to say that also lends to the idea that when we look at different people or different stories, we could say that, I wouldn't have done that, or if I was in that same situation, this is how I would have responded. And it's easier to say that from the outside looking in until you're actually in that situation, and then all of a sudden you respond the same way, and people are like, "I thought you said." Well, see, this what had happened was,
or even much worse. You're like, oh, I did that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you did.
Vanessa says elevation is not always intentional, but more a setting that most humans are in. The people that did how and what are about themselves, needs, wants, feelings. The ones judging about selves as well. Yeah, that's
Okay.
what
The
it
people that
is.
did
Everybody's
how and
about
what
self.
are
6 million ways to die. Choose like
Mm-hmm.
perfect example. 6 million ways to die. Choose one. And we over here debating whether shooting yourself in the head is good than eating cheeseburgers every day. We are both
One's-
about to die. Like we both
one's a slower death, and much more enjoyable for a period of time.
That's what I say. For a period of time, yes.
For a period of time. Yeah.
Exactly.
And you don't see it coming, so that's what
Exactly.
And I think too, if we're talking about chapters, I think that's why we're called to use him as a standard and not each other, because you're seeing this chapter comparing yourself to that chapter of that person's life. But like you said, if you were in that situation, you would have probably made the same choice. So just compare. When you compare yourself to him, then you're like, I'm a hot mess. Like, wait a minute. Like, I'm not as good or as great as I think I am. Like, I need work, just like they need work. We all need work.
I think what's missing is the Pentecostal experience. Pentecost experience, where they were all on one accord and the Holy Spirit fell on them. And from that point on, they moved and act for a period of time as one.
Why don't we have empathy? Because this sounds like a conversation about empathy. It sounds like we're not empathetic. We can't identify with other people. We don't have empathy. And if I don't see you, if I don't see myself as you, if I don't see you and me, it's difficult to have empathy. And if I demarcate myself from you, either because your skin is different, your hair is different, the things you do are different, then I tend to treat you less than you deserve to be as a brother, as a sister, as a.
So what do you think that is? I struggle with empathy. I struggle. So
empathy.
You just kind of like,
Jared's like, yep.
I want.
You're not going to make it.
Let me take these comments and then we come back. Equivalency says it's difficult to see ourselves because it's hard to see things that are close. Okay. And then there's a comment from Vanessa here. It's a big deal to actually obey loving God, self to love others. Equivalency says if we could record our actions, we will have a different response of view. Vanessa goes, because we are removing ourselves from the sinful pattern of world. We can't see others until we truly see ourselves. Yeah, and that's what I was going to say, Kenrick, in terms of empathy. If that was me, what would I want? What would I feel? What would I need?
So that's the thing.
So that's really my default.
That's
the thing. What, Kenrick?
That's my question. Like I'm like guys, like we're like we got to figure this out. Like a lot of people are in the same spot. Like let's figure it out. And if we can't, like we got to deal with it. That's where my empathy kind of, and it's not like a I don't want to, I'm not discarding or making light of the situation. I'm just always like,
where's the solution?
Well, yeah, I'm very solution oriented. Like, okay, I hear you. Like, this is where we're at. Like, what's next? How are we going to figure this out? What's the next step into dealing with the problem? And if it's just sitting here and waiting, then that's fine. But
I don't know if what you're describing, and maybe someone who is more touchy-feely than I am may want to chime in here, but I don't know if what you're describing is a lack of empathy. Because if you understand that other people deal with this and that there's a thing to be taken care of, just sitting in it is not reflective of empathy.
But is this empathy? So I'm assuming empathy actually includes emotions.
It can and sometimes does.
Okay, but it doesn't have to. If it doesn't have to, then we're good.
I mean, so it's understanding where someone else is enough to be able to relate to where they are.
100%.
And maybe Cliff is finding because he sits in that space more than I do. Maybe I'm butchering the thing and I don't know what I'm talking about.
So I think most people would assume like the way you're describing it, like with emotions and all that kind of stuff. I guess that's where. Go ahead.
For example, like we could use like homeless people. So there's some people that just see homeless people and just think they just need to go get a job, like go work, like go find you a job. That's what you need to do. Stop asking me for money, like go do something. But for some, like I said, empathy is usually my default to the good or bad side of that. So I would see a homeless person and think that could be me. Like the more you talk to homeless people, if you spend the time to even communicate with them, you'll realize their stories vary. Like sometimes it's not something they did that caused them to be in that situation.
And then there are times where you talk to them, it's something that they want. Because I've had those conversations too. I guess that's my thing. Like, I'm just like.
Empathy doesn't always lead you to sitting in the feelings. It may lead you to, you need to buckle up your bootstrap and get this thing. Because I've been to where you are. And sitting here and crying, do that for a while, but after a while you need to get up and do something because that's not going to help. Because I've been there, right? And so you understand the feeling of despair, and you understand that feeling of despair that they're feeling, while it may be what they're feeling is not where they need to be, and so empathy may lead you to take another.
So it's the relatability to the situation and being able to put yourself in their shoes,
and then respond accordingly.
Gotcha. Okay.
Absolutely.
I have empathy then.
Wakita says, absolutely true. Some want to be on the street.
So is that true? Like, I'm sorry, this is a side note. Like, I've never heard that perspective.
What?
I've never. That one was new for me just now.
So I like walking down the street, and I just, sometimes I just talk to people, sometimes I don't, whatever. And then, like, if somebody asks me, like, a couple of people have asked me, can I get money? I'm like, hey, let's go. I'll take you something to eat. But, like, we'll actually go get something to eat and sit down. I was like, no, we're going to sit down and we're going to eat. Like, me and you are going to sit down, and we're going to eat, and we're going to talk.
Right.
We have conversations, and you run into different people. We used to do homeless ministries where, and just talk to people. And there are a lot of people, I won't say most, because I will never, but there are a lot of people that like being off the grid.
Oh, okay.
Right. And so the homeless life achieves that purpose. There are a lot of people that, are there for, very, to your point, very unfortunate reasons. Right. And so, but I guess to your point, I think you made a very fair statement. There's so many different reasons why. And so it's very tough to be empathetic, because sometimes you just don't know what it is. Right. And so for me, it's like, I can be empathetic to someone who fell on hard times. It's hard for me to empathetic. Like if that's what you wanted to do, like that,
Right.
like
Well, that doesn't
you made
require
the
empathy,
decision.
though. I don't think
Very,
that.
very true.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
I was trying to get to 1 Corinthians 10:13, well, 10:11 through 13, but mostly 13. Because I think
1 Corinthians 11,
10, 1 Corinthians 10.
10.
Mhm. Now let's go back. Let's go back to 1. So I think Paul makes a very powerful point here, and we'll read 1 through to 13. He says, "For I do not want you to be ignorant of the fact, brothers and sisters, that our ancestors were all under the cloud, and that they all passed through the sea. They were all baptized into Moses in the cloud and in the sea. They all ate the same spiritual food and drank the same spiritual drink. For they drank from the spiritual rock that accompanied them, and that rock was Christ. Nevertheless, God was not pleased with most of them. Their bodies were scattered in the wilderness. Now these things occurred as examples to keep us from setting our hearts on evil things as they did. Do not be idolaters, as some of them were, as it was written. The people sat down to eat and drink and got up to indulge in revelry. We should not commit sexual immorality, as some of them did, and in one day 23,000 of them died. We should not test Christ, as some of them did, and were killed by snakes. And do not grumble, as some of them did, and were killed by the destroying angel. These things happened to them as examples and were written down as warnings for us, on whom the culmination of the ages has come. So if you think you are standing firm, be careful that you do not fall." And this is the verse I was trying to get to, but I wanted to read it in context so that we not just out. "No temptation has overtaken you except what is common to man." I'm going to pause there because I heard Pastor Henry Wright, say one time, the devil is not out there thinking of special temptations for you. You ain't that special. Whatever he's giving you is common to man.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like sometimes we miss it because sometimes we get overwhelmed by our own circumstances. But then sometimes we evaluate other people's circumstances as worse than others or worse than mine. I only struggle with eating meat, right? And technically that's not a sin because it's not in the 10 Commandments, right? Or worse yet, I only struggle with eating cake and desserts and pastries. That's not in the 10 Commandments. That might be wrong because it's unhealthy, but it's not a sin.
Where's the struggle?
No,
I hear you.
But that thing that you're doing over there is a sin, so you're wrong. But according to this, no temptation has overtaken you except what is common to man. And so my struggle with cake and your struggle with cake.
Cakes.
Somebody called that. It's the same thing. And I think this verse here, and there's another one, kind of suggests that there's an equivalency here that we miss. What is the temptation that is common to man? And
I think
I'm gonna let you speak, Jerry. If I am clear on what that is, then I don't see you any different than me. Then I have empathy. Then I have grace. Then I have compassion.
Okay.
Then my critique is fair and more balanced. And my attempt to lift you up and my encouragement is a little bit more purposeful and helpful. Go ahead, Jerry.
That last statement you made kind of answered what I was about to ask. So,
What was it?
The pause. The pause.
Because to your point, I mean, figure out what that core temptation is, but it's, if we avoid that, whatever that is, then there's what is that scripture that says, to him who knoweth If you know what to do and you don't do it, it is sin.
Yeah, I was thinking the same thing. Yep.
Because it's very easy to say, well, you struggle with cake or you struggle with, Red Bull or whatever, and therefore, but once the Spirit has led you to something you need to do for you, whatever that is, it might be to,
Whatever it is.
stop playing PC games for a while, stop spending so much time hanging on the basketball court, whatever it is that he says you need to slow down with this or cut this out. If you don't
To you,
follow that
that's sin.
instruction, that becomes it.
Yep.
But that's hard to swallow, right?
Let's turn in light of that, Jerry, to Hebrews 4. That's not the verse that you were talking about, but we still turn into Hebrews 4. And while we turn in, I'm going to bring in a comment from Frederick, or Fred. Empathy is less about understanding other situations and more about connecting to the emotional gravity of their humanity.
That's my problem.
Okay.
That's what I always interpreted empathy to be, Fred, and that's where I fall short.
Fred, I would like for you
of the glory of God.
I would like for you to unpack that a little bit. If you can't via text, hit me. I'm gonna have you quickly come on and verbalize that. I'd like to have you clarify that some if you're available. Hit me by text. And if you have time and availability, or you could do the pros thing and write it down in the chat and we'll read it, whichever is more convenient for you.
Yo, you're great with words, Fred. You can figure that out.
Yeah. I just didn't want him to start and you don't share it until we're done, right? Hebrews 4, verse 14. Let me move this out of the way. Hebrews 4:14. Therefore, since we have a great high priest who has ascended into heaven, Jesus the Son of God, let us hold firmly to the faith we profess. For we do not have a high priest who is unable to empathize with our weakness, but we have one who has been tempted in every way, just as we are, yet he did not sin. Let us then approach God's throne of grace with confidence so that we may receive mercy and find grace to help us in our time of need. So Paul is on one hand saying, all our temptations are common to all of us, to mankind. Here we have Hebrews saying that Jesus experienced in every way the same temptations that we are. So that would beg, I don't believe Jesus experienced the temptation to smoke weed or do coke, right? I don't believe that. I also don't believe that he was ever tempted to be homosexual. And I'm going to just leave those three on the table. So what is it that he was tempted to do that is common to all of us?
I think you have to go back to the...
Yeah.
So
you want to sum that up?
The wilderness, right?
Equivalency.
You got to go back to the wilderness.
Disobedience. Disobedience to God.
I think you have to go back to the wilderness.
Sum it up.
Go back to the wilderness? Tell me more, Kendrick.
Yeah, you got to go back to, when he's out there for 40 days, and you look at the temptations that Satan came to him with. When you read Hebrews and the previous verse that we just read, that's the first thing that came to my mind, because I think those kind of encapsulated everything that it's when you have the power to do something and you choose not to because it's not my will but your will, right? When it's the selfish, and I think we talked about it earlier in the conversation, it's that selfishness and that desire to please whatever it is that you want, right? And Satan tried to appeal. Cakes wasn't getting. He was with what's the Mary, like she had given up cakes to he talked to the lady that had 7 husbands, so that wasn't getting them, right? So like he appealed to what he thought was going to get Jesus, right? And it was his glory, all of these different things. And the things is, is the things that he knew he could go ahead and get. Oh my gosh, what? You're reading comments? My God. I saw it. I saw it in your eyes. My God.
Yeah, you had to come earlier to get that cakes reference. You had to come.
So anyway, that's when you were reading those verses, the thing I thought about was Jesus in the wilderness.
I mean, that's true, because sometimes we like, how could this have caused them to do this? And it's like, yeah, that might not be your thing, but if he had used another thing, you'd have fell real quick. It would have been
Why
over.
is it I can't?
Right.
Go ahead.
To that next person, they're looking at you the same way. Like, why did you fall to that? I wouldn't have fallen to that, but I gave you this and you fell to that already. You fell to that one. So
why don't we take our man? I know how hard it is to not eat cake. I know how hard it is when it's nice and warm and sitting on the thing and I can smell it in the house. And it's been 2 weeks since I've been on the gym routine, and I think I'm due for a cheat day.
Yeah. Like, I'm allowed one.
Just happened to come by. It just happened to come by with this thing.
Or
I go in the office and somebody brings the muffins in the office, and they just put them out there right next to the coffee machine because they want to share them with you. And you have to, like, why can't I say I understand that feeling? So when you are overwhelmed by fear and you can't fight the fear to act in a different way, I can't say I understand that feeling. Here's what I do when I'm fighting with cake. Maybe it will help you with your fear.
There's a lot of
Why does it have to be cake that you fighting with cake too for me to be able to relate? Why do we get lost in the details and miss this commonality?
Can I say
let me add to it real quick. Sometimes some people are going through certain situations, or they have certain addictions. They oftentimes don't want to hear from someone else that's not going through that exact same thing, because they say, you don't know what I'm going through. Just adding that in there.
So you express that same thing.
It goes back to what you were saying. I mean, it's like we create these hierarchies, right? And you hear it on a very much lower level, right, of my hierarchy. Like what annoys me, because it annoyed me for a while, was like when people say I'm busy. Man, I'm busy. Like, how you're busy different than my busy, different than his busy, then different than their busy. Like, people are busy. Like, I don't need to hear about you being busy, right? But I think it creates this hierarchy of, it makes me feel a little different. I think it's the same thing with, with what you're saying, Courtney. And people may feel that, and that may be true. But the fact is, as we're talking about, temptation's temptation. The struggle's the struggle, whether it's Coke, cakes, alcohol, other cakes, whatever, right? Addiction and all these different things are there. And if you're tempted and you have as we're talking about, when I was talking reference to Jesus and the whip, you cannot die to self and you allow these things to take over, then we're all in the same position. It doesn't matter what it is. Right. And I don't think it's very difficult for us to accept that, because we like the hierarchy. We like being either martyrs or being in a position to look down on people. I don't know what it's just, I think it all comes back to self.
But back to what Courtney was saying though, I agree with what you're saying. I think too, though, when somebody has gone through what you have actually, like, it is very similar, it hits different when that person tells you that they actually experienced what you experienced. and they made it out, and they've, you know, to say, oh yeah, well, it's like when my car broke down. It's like, not really, but I mean, I see what you're trying to say, but they're not the same thing. When
Well,
people,
that's yeah, Coke and a broken down car is a little
Well, see,
different.
there you go.
Right. We have to like we gotta, yeah, we gotta actually be in the
so there's
same.
categories.
But you struggling, someone struggling with porn or adultery, and someone struggling with Coke or alcohol or whatever it is,
Yeah.
sugar.
Mhm.
I mean, I think all those things are the same because it's sort of literally like something's not helping you, and you cannot get through. I mean, I think you can have those conversations.
It's it's a lot of factors that go into what we're talking about. I don't think there's just one thing we can pinpoint, because I believe, just like what Kenrick was saying, regardless of whatever it is that you find yourself beholden to, it 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 should make a difference whether the person has been through it or not if the information is the same. I have these conversations sometimes. What what makes what I say, because I've been through what you've been through, different than the person who went to school and understood the same, and we are giving you the same answers? It's the same answer. It's how you relate to it that makes it different for you. You receive it from me because you look at me as somebody who's been through it. But I'm telling you the same thing that the person who was book smart, that's never been through it, is going to give you as well.
Well, I think it's the emotional factor though, because like you can tell me the same answer the other person told me, but you don't understand the emotional part to what I felt when I experienced this thing.
Well, that's what
Unless,
Kim. No, I'm sorry. That's what Kenrick was saying. That's empathy for.
and that's why
It's like,
it hits
you want me to be
different.
emotionally attached to it, I'm gonna tell you what you need to do.
I mean,
Hey,
it like I said, it hits different because when you
Right.
go, when you have somebody that's been there and
Mhm.
they tell you when you're expressing your emotion and the words aren't coming out just right, but they know exactly what you're saying,
Mhm.
that's different. Like
no,
that's
it
how.
is, and that's great.
Mhm.
Uh,
You just don't.
is it necessary? It's
What's
great
up?
if you got it.
Right.
So I wanna do a couple of things. There's some comments. I wanna welcome Fred, who just jumped on real quick.
Busty.
I'm gonna have
What
him
up?
unpack the empathy thing a little
What's going
bit
on,
for
Fred?
you in there for us. I'm gonna wanna dig into that a little bit. But before I do all that, I wanna say, Kermit, you pointed out you started to say, well, these things are alike and those things are not. And that's kind of where I was going, right? You were able to find the equivalency and see why the car being broke down was different from the thing. You were able to distinguish the what from the how, right? And see
Correct.
these what's are equivalent, those what's are not. And I guess part of my initial question, just to set context for people who are listening, is why is that a challenge for us to find that equivalency? That's where we started. Dee said she agrees with Kenrick to go back to the wilderness with temptations, appetite, fame, suicide is what was presented there. And Gerald said he feels me because he can't walk by pound cake. He feels my pain. So I have another cake brother out there. Fred, so go back and make a statement again and unpack it a little bit for us.
Oh crap! Now I gotta figure out what I said.
Let me see if I get it. Empathy is less about understanding other situations and more about connecting to the emotional gravity of their humanity.
Yeah. So I think part of it is that what happens a lot of times is that if we have not directly experienced something, then it makes it difficult for us to put ourselves in someone else's shoes or inside their actual skin. And what a lot of us do, especially in church and religion, is that we want to justify, like, is your situation justified? Could I understand how you could end up there, right? It's very It's very much how the Pharisees treated other people. It's that, you know, there are these parameters by which you can logically end up in a situation where it's not your fault. Other than that, you are sinful, you're wretched, whatever. And it was a way of creating this distinction whereby they can make themselves feel more holy or more elevated. Like Kendrick talked about the hierarchy, right? And so we do that in so many ways. Humanity has created all these different caste systems, right? Whether it's around money or skin color or sin, we rank those things based on our own addictions. But we're all addicted to different things, right?
Mm-hmm.
And when we understand that addiction stems from the need to right this void inside of ourselves, right? This thing inside of us that makes us feel less than adequate. We're trying to compensate for it. We're trying to medicate that thing. We all have that thing. Some of us, for some people, it's pound cake and it's everything, and it turns into being 400 or 500 pounds. For some people, it's porn. For some people, it's cigarettes or alcohol, right? It all looks different. If we say that the thing is different and because it's different, I can't understand that, that's what separates us. But if we can connect to the fact that we all feel empty about something, we all have felt less than, we all have this sense of identity that is a little bit warped or a lot warped. And so being able to connect to that feeling is what makes us all human, and saying, man, I feel that, right? I feel you. That's the difference in saying, I understand. Okay, I understand, right? Because then we make a judgment a lot of times on whether or not you deserve. Like if you're in Atlanta, right? If you're in Atlanta and you see somebody walk up to you at a gas station, you get prepared for the story because everybody's got the hey, bud, man, you know what I'm saying? You know, look, man, no disrespect, you know, and there's a whole story.
Yo, that's it. That's verbatim.
Dude, that's it. And so what you have to do then is that you become like a member of the Academy for Motion Picture Arts and Sciences. You have to judge the value of this story and whether or not you're going to dig out your wallet, right? And give this person $5, $10, $20 based on the quality, you know. And then we do that. We do the same thing in church. Like we say, oh, okay, I can understand that, right? You deserve to be prayed for or sympathy or whatever, right?
Wow.
But that's not what.
Very, very subjective.
Yeah, that's not what we're called to do. God says, you know, God didn't come down and cast judgment on anyone. He said, I understand. I came to experience the same thing, but he already resonated with what the emotional experience was. He came to elevate us out of that. And he said, I guess maybe we've heard the story about the person that's in the pit and people keep walking by. You have the different people that walk by, and the last person that walks by is the person that actually gets down in the pit with the other person and says, you know, I've been in this pit before, but I got out. I know how to get out, right? It doesn't mean it was the exact same pit. I've been in a pit before. You know, it didn't look like your pit, but I know what it feels like to be in a pit where you feel like I'll never get out of this thing. And people are walking by me and looking down on me. And so, I don't know.
So what prevents us from being like Kendrick and not having those feelings?
Nothing prevents us from being like Kendrick.
What are the obstacles we be able to
We can all suck.
What are the obstacles?
To being able to feel like that?
So on some level, I believe that we all are. What we have done is we have made God in our image. And so we have said that God, you know, is so wrathful, so vengeful, that he only cares about how we perform, how we behave, right? And so we believe it's all performance based. And so if you're on your job and you're trying to figure out what are the things I need to do to get this raise, what are the things I need to do to pass, fail, or whatever the case may be, then we start evaluating other people on that, then we become that judgmental. We separate ourselves from other people, because what we never want to do is we never want to admit that we don't deserve to be there ourselves. But the thing is, if we reverse it and realize that God's grace covers us all equally, and that the point of the grace is that none of us are worthy, then we all start from that same place. And now the empathy is is easier because I'm not better than you or worse than you. I'm the same as you, right? God sees us all equally. And the call is not to be better to earn his favor, but to be closer so that we are in greater relationship and become more like him. And I can do that, and Kendrick can do that, and Courtney and Lorraine, we can all do that, right? Because if we're all starting from zero.
If we've experienced his love truly because of how bad we were, we'd be ideally we'd be better equipped to return that love to somebody who, is just as bad as we are.
That's the whole point.
Ideally.
I like what you said, like starting from zero. It's like that comes back to that, in a sense, being born again, if you think about it that way. Like where there's a reset.
Yeah, I mean, 100%. I think the thing about it is that when we really understand who God is and what he wants, like that's the beauty of salvation is the reset button, right? Like if you ever, like my kids will, they draw on their tablets, right? My kids are young. And so they'll draw on their tablets and they have the little colors and stuff like that. But if they ever mess up, there's the undo button and they can start all over again, right? They can't figure out, well, I messed it up. All right, we'll just press the reset button and it's fresh. And there is an audible sigh that they give. Okay, right? And that's what we get to have, right? But sometimes we're withholding that reset button from other people. They're saying, "No, you don't get that. You screwed that up, right?" And we like to sit there, and that's what we do. We cancel people now because like nobody deserves. Like we decide who gets the reset button. Who doesn't. Say again.
Would it be fair?
They'll say you used up all your resets. Like, yeah, you're out now. There's no more left.
Right.
70 times 7, dog.
Would it be fair, guys, based on what you've said, to say that the issue is related to prejudice? If we were to kind of synthesize it down, at the root of the issue is prejudice.
I would say
I think so. Prejudging. Yeah.
Well, prejudice meaning I demarcate myself from others and make myself better based on some criteria that I determine makes you different. Whether it be, as Fred said, your skin color, your activity, whether you like black cake versus sponge cake, whether you're from that side of the 8 Mile line or this side of the 8 Mile line, whether you like blue better than red. I have a feeling of importance by whatever this demarcating factor is. And so I feel better about myself and lesser about you because of it. And I don't see you as equal. Because in prejudice, you don't see the other person or the other people as equal.
Right.
So because I don't see you as equal, I have this prejudice. And whatever the thing that the prejudice is based on that I'm using as a demarcator is the root of the issue.
I agree.
That's a fair.
That's fair. If we go back to what you read earlier from Luke chapter 14, just looking at verse 3, and it just stands out to me that it says Jesus asked the Pharisees and experts in religious law. So that to me is what made the Pharisees and those teachers, that they felt that elevated them above everybody.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
When you come from this idea that you are broken internally, you need those differentiators to make up the difference, right? And if it has to originate with you, then you're going to be the one that judges that. But also, again, making God in your image. You see God as seeing you that way. And if we understood that that's not how God sees us at all. God actually sees us as perfect. He actually sees us as the way that we originally were designed and created. That's how he sees us. He just understands that's not where we are now. And what he wants to do is he wants to shift our frame of reference to his so that it aligns up. But what we've done is we've taken where we are and we've shifted God over to us. And so when you have that, now you're justified in seeing everybody else the same way, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because if God sees you that way, well, I'm justified, and I'm closer to God because I see God. I see you the way that God sees you, and you don't know that.
Mm-hmm.
Or what if you look at it and say, you know what, we're all equal because not only did he see us that way, but then to double down, he sent his son to die for all of us. So that's like that price that he said he bought us. So we're all the same because he did that for everybody.
Same price.
Right.
He bought
I
us as
bought
a
all of you back. Yeah.
group rate. It don't really matter what group. Everybody come in. Yeah.
Right. And then now it's like, so you can't talk about what's mine like that. I did something for him, the same thing I did for you. Like they're just as precious to me as it, So it's almost like, hey, I want you to look at what's precious to me, it's special. It's special to me, so it should be special to you.
Mm-hmm.
That makes me think of that parable where the owner got workers at different stages and they each ended up getting the same money. And they're like, wait a minute, we've been working all day and these two just came on and they getting the same money that I like.
A full day's pay, right?
Right, like, wait a minute, that's not adding up. Like that math is not mathing right, Lord. I need you to fix that because we should be getting the same. So it's the
Right.
same thing.
I mean, it's just like the prodigal son. The older brother stayed. He just like, wait, hold up. I've been here this whole time. Like, you never threw a party for me.
I think I would have been a little salty too. Just for clarification.
Vanessa adds, do we have to act bad to understand his love? It's amazing to experience love when we messed up. It's amazing to experience his love when we obey, in my view.
That's actually a good question.
Okay. Go ahead, Kenrick.
No, it's a good question because I think we create that dynamic, right? Especially in religion and family and all that kind of stuff. And so I've always, and I think we've had this conversation, maybe not on Water for the Thirsty, but I know me and Jared, I think we've had this conversation, but the answer is definitely no, because I think you can appreciate love. I don't think my kids need to go through bad experiences to know and appreciate the fact that I love them and care for them. But in bad situations, I think it crystallizes it, right? Because you see the depth and the extent of how much love can, how deep this love can be. That in spite of, despite what you did, I still love you. So I think ideally, you don't need it, but it definitely crystallizes it.
And that's with the. Not just quickly. I was just saying, and that goes with the famous text, "For God so loved the world that He gave His only begotten Son." So I was just saying that's what comes to mind when Kendrick was mentioning that. How it encapsulates all of that.
What comes to mind for me is while we were yet sinners, Christ died for us. While we were still enemies with God, we were already acting bad. I mean, I think that is the key part of it, is that it's not that we have to act bad for him to love us. We already have been bad and he loved us, right? So it's not a turning to badness to experience the love.
Or he loved us before we even acted bad.
Well, we've always been acting bad. The only persons on the earth who haven't acted bad are no longer on the earth. You know what I'm saying? A couple of them are dead, and the other one is in heaven. So and the ones that are dead because they acted bad, right? So the good news is that we are bad, but he sees us not as bad and went out of his way to provide a way for us to not be bad. And so it's the reason we might come to appreciate his love is because we come to that understanding of who we are or who we have been. And I think if the starting point is I'm going to act bad to be loved, it skips over the fact that that's where we are,
You,
or
you
that's
know,
where we were or have been. How about that?
I think going back to your question, you asked about prejudice, right? And it relates to love in this way, in that we often make behavior and identity the same thing. And when I say identity, I mean the worthiness, right? So we have all these things that identify us, and they say we are this. Like you are the things that you are. You are your place in life. Your skin color represents your character or whatever, right? We have all these things that become stand-ins for identity. And we even make our own stories up about what that means for us, our worthiness or unworthiness. And then we place people on the spectrum based on how we see the world. But what God is saying is that how you behave is not irrelevant. It's just that that's not the thing that identifies your worth to me, right? Like I don't want my kids to behave badly, but whether they behave good or bad has nothing to do with how I see them. It has nothing to do with the love that I have for them. And so they don't need to behave perfectly for me to want to bless them with ice cream or home or a new car or new clothes or
Cake.
A bit or cake, right? Whatever persuasion. They don't have to do anything to deserve me to want to bless them. I'm gonna bless them because they're my children. But I want them to act accordingly because not just because that's how they reflect me, but also it's good for them because that leads to a better life for them. But when we start to identify ourselves based on our behavior or performance or whatever the case may be, we get this spectrum, that's where it goes off the rails because that's not how God sees us. And that's not what he's requiring of us to treat because we got no control over that anyway, right? I can't put you in a category and save you or condemn you to hell.
Right. You're right.
So,
And I'm as flawed as you are.
or more.
As flawed. As flawed.
I think that's part of the enemy's plot, though, because he makes you think that you are what you do.
Mm-hmm.
So the things you're doing, he makes you feel like. Then you start judging yourself and saying, "I am this. I am worthless. God is never gonna forgive me. I'm a mess." Or and then that idea that you're the only person in the world going through what you're going through. Like it's just me. I'm pitiful. I'm the worst person on this planet. And it makes you isolate yourself away from that community that would lift you up, that would bring you up and make you feel like I can't be around them. I'm unworthy. I'm disgusting or whatever the horrible things you say to yourself to isolate yourself and to distance yourself from the God that's just like like I'm here, like just open your eyes. I'm right here.
So Vanessa says it sounds like we understand his love through grace and mercy. What are your thoughts on that?
Yes, because we know how we would deal with people if they do certain things, and so we look at God like you said. We paint God in our image. Like we know how we would handle some stuff. So we're like, well, like thank you, Lord, because if if it was me, I know I would have handled
What comes to mind from that is, but God demonstrates his love for us in this.
Mm-hmm.
So I would say, yeah, that's about right. that's the ultimate communication of his love, and that's what he's used to try and flick the light on, right, for us. Um, and that's the love that he wants us to then turn around and give to other people, without prejudice.
Can I go ahead, Jared? No, sorry. Go ahead.
No, that's it.
What you all just made me think about was something that Fred had started to allude to, and Lorraine kind of jumped in. Do you think the reason that we're having such an issue is because our society, in a sense, is built upon a reward system? And it's hard for us to understand that because we've been, in a sense, brought up: you do good, you get rewarded for it, and if you don't do good, when it when the thought pattern should be, you're supposed to do good. Period. You're just supposed to do that, and how you are rewarded is just based upon my love, or based upon what I feel like doing for you, or what the next person would feel like doing for you.
Or like
If
even
go ahead.
Let you finish. Go ahead.
No, go ahead. No,
no, or even like, even with the girls, I'm things happen. You're gonna make a mistake. Like, it's like, yeah, you're gonna mess up. And like, let's talk about it. We'll figure it out. And the lesson is, what do I do in order to take a pause, dust myself off, get back up, assess, and then try to make a different decision. Right. And I don't think we're in it. Well, and you see it all the time in business, the Silicon Valley, model is to fail. People don't reward failing. Like, just understanding that you are, I have conversations, on my projects, on my development projects, when I'm dealing with homeowners, especially first-time home buyers. I talk to them about the fact that, buildings are built by imperfect people who constructed imperfect materials. Something's going to go wrong, right? Mm-hmm. I was like, my responsibility is to, when those things go wrong, is to make sure you're covered through my warranty and all of that. And so that's why I'm here. But I'm telling you from jump, something's going to happen. Just because you bought a brand new building unit for $800,000 doesn't mean that something's not going to happen. Mm-hmm. And, being able to carry that into, our lives and realize that there are going to be mistakes. You're going to mess up. Someone's going to mistake you. Someone's going to and you gotta, how do you deal with all of that and still maintain relationship?
Mm-hmm. So I'm gonna add this comment and make a clarification. She says, I guess, but again, in my view, he does much more. I feel bad for God that grace and mercy is what we see or get to experience most from him. Not saying that it's not important or great, but I know that he's in a perpetual state of forgiveness is an issue. But I know that he is.
But knowing
that he's in a perpetual state of forgiveness is an issue for me. But it's okay if it's just me. What about the liming love? I don't know what that means, but I think
living love, maybe. I don't know.
Perhaps maybe. Living love. Maybe she'll correct it.
So I think, to what Vanessa's saying, right? It's almost like, but again, right? It goes to the concept of guilt and shame, right? So guilt says I did wrong. Shame says I am wrong. And most of us live in this state of shame. And guilt is what turns us to God, and shame is what takes us from God, right? Adam said it in the very beginning. I was ashamed when I heard your voice, and I hid from you. Shame separate.
He said I was afraid.
Right. Well, he was afraid, but shame sponsors that fear, right? It separates you, right? I'm not worthy to be in your presence. There's something that is between us. Guilt says, man, I messed up. But if you value the relationship, then you will turn to God to be reconciled. And what God is saying is that if you acknowledge your guilt, I have the mercy and the grace to cover what you did, because how I see you is as worthy because you're my child. I love you, right? And if we live in that framework all the time, so I'm gonna say something. It is weird, but I no longer exist in this place where when I do something wrong, I feel bad about it. I know that it was wrong, but I don't live in the feeling of adopting the shame of it. Man, I messed up. God, I'm sorry. Right? Why? Because when you understand that the whole point of salvation is reconciliation and vindication, right? Lucifer called God out of his name in front of the whole universe. And God said, I can show you better than I can tell you. So he let it play out so that people could see that the devil was a liar for real. But we are the personification of that vindication. When we reconcile not just in our relationship, but we reconcile the image of God with the actual God, right? So we reconcile the reflection in the mirror with the person that is standing in reality, right? And so when we put those two things together, that it verifies the integrity of who God says He is, right? So I am love. I act in these ways, like, so we don't have to feel bad that God lives in perpetual state of forgiveness. That is God's character. He is being in integrity. If He didn't act in that way, then He would be the liar that the devil says He is. Oh, you're not, because how could He be? He wouldn't be worthy to forgive us if He wasn't in a state of perfection and in a state of constantly trying to reconcile that thing. Whenever you look in the mirror is always going to reflect back perfectly what you see, unless there are flaws or cracks in the mirror.
Got it. I would say, to add to what you said, that I think it's more of an introduction more than a perpetual state. I don't think his goal is to have us be in that. While the goal is to mature us and work out some of those kinks, I think because of the nature of love, it's showing concern. The agape is the active demonstration of concern for the object of the affection, or the agape. And so if you're in this state, active concern for you is forgiveness and grace and mercy. As you move to another state, it looks like something else, from one state to the next. But we started at this state, and that's how we get introduced to this concern from Him. And I think, yeah, it's not a it's not a perpetual state. Go ahead.
I think I get what Vanessa's saying. I think she's saying, I mean, she can clarify, but I think she's saying it's not the end all be all. So that is part of it, but that's not all of it.
That's what I'm saying. It's a starting point.
Right. And so just like we were talking about last time, the whole friendship thing, it's my friend. Like, you don't just cherish that friendship because they forgave you when y'all had a spat. And, there's we hung out, we spent time together, we laughed together. We went on this journey together. We did blah, 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 the memories, the all of that. So I think that's where she's.
I receive that. All right. So landing the plane on this, the challenge in equivalency is prejudice. And maybe control. But I would start with prejudice. Is that what I'm going to walk away with? So my next question, and I have to ask this one, is based in Genesis. I only have 25 minutes. Genesis 29.
It's gonna take that long?
Genesis 39. Not maybe.
I just have a question before you ask that. So Fred couldn't have put all that in the chat?
I wouldn't have been able to ask questions. I wouldn't have been able to ask questions. It'll take too long. We'd have still been reading. I've been writing.
You know how it goes. All right, so boom. So like
Genesis 39, 20 to 23. This struck me this last time I read it, right? So it says Joseph's master took him and put him in prison, the place where the king's prisoners were confined. But while Joseph was there in the prison, the Lord was with him. He showed him kindness and granted him favor in the eyes of the prison ward. So the warden put Joseph in charge of all those held in the prison, and he was responsible for all that was done there. The warden paid no attention to anything under Joseph's care because the Lord was with Joseph and gave him success in whatever he did. And I had to ask myself the question, and I'm not asking it to you. Is God's presence enough? And I say that because if you look at Joseph, like God was with him when his brothers sold him. God was with him when he ended up by Potiphar. God was with him when he ended up in his jail. But God didn't really stop any of these things from happening or change the circumstance. Right? So I'm asking, is just knowing that God is with me in this very uncomfortable situation enough for me to be okay with it?
It's supposed
and I want to ask that for you. I want to pose that question to you for you to also reflect on.
Yes.
Is it enough for you to know that he's with you?
Yes.
When you're in jail unfairly.
It's supposed to be.
There you go. It should be.
It not always is, because sometimes you go through stuff. I think so. I have phases when I go through things. I'll cry. I'm the person, I will cry, panic, holler first. I'll go through those phases first. Then I'll be like, Lord, why is this happening? And eventually I get to the your will be done, you're with me. But I go through a phase. Like I don't just automatically be like, oh, I'm going through this, but God is here. Like, no, that's not where I start from. I go through stages and then I land the plane over in there.
Mm-hmm.
Eric, you said an emphatic yes a couple of times. Why is
it? Yeah, so I'm not really an emotional guy. So I'm a very practical guy, right? Mm-hmm. And so like even and yes, I know you are with me, Lord, and this is it. This is what it is. Right? There's nothing, I've clearly done everything I could do. Whether I'm treated unfairly or not, there's really nothing I can do. One of the things I've learned was that you control what you can control, and there's a lot of things you can't control, and it is what it is. And you can't do anything about it. You can't do anything about it.
Okay.
So it is.
There is enough? Is his presence enough?
His presence is enough. Knowing that I'm alive, because the thing is like if I'm alive, then I know he's with me. Right? I know that if I'm staying in contact with him, if I'm doing and that's the thing, like Joseph, like once again, it goes back to, we see things and we view things from like looking at the story, right? But at the end of the day, how long was Joseph, from the time Joseph was kidnapped to or put in the pit to the time he's out?
Like the difference between is like 15 years.
15
17.
years.
He was 17 when he got kidnapped and 30 when he got out of prison.
And 30 when he got out. So that's 13.
13 years.
Right? 13 is a nice little bit for not doing that's a nice little bit.
For an innocent
man. But it's 13 years, dog. Like it's Jesus getting lost in the temple, for a year.
But that's at the end of the story, us looking back 2,000 years later. I'm talking about in this moment here, where Joseph does not have any expectation that this dream thing is going to come in 12 years, and
correct. But that's my point. That's my point.
That moment is God enough, because this story could have gone very differently if Joseph rots away in prison and dies. and like nothing
And
happened
God was
but
still
that.
with him. And God was
So
still
God is
with him.
with him, and he prospers in prison because God is with him, but he
Mhm.
remains in prison.
Mhm.
So
Mhm.
I gotta leave y'all with this because I gotta put the kids to bed. I would say that the Bible talks about a peace that passeth all understanding, and so when we talk about God's presence, there's a pastor who has a great quote. He says, "God's promise is His presence, and His presence is His power." If we fully experience God's presence, we know how powerful it is to know that He is with us. The thing I think that we think of God is when He's with us as if He's peeking through the window, watching what we got going on, but He's not doing anything about it. And I think that when we really are experiencing His presence, we understand that even the storm that we're dealing with, or we think is dealing with us, is in His hand. Like He's in control of that situation. And that as long as He is with us, it's already worked out in our favor. For God, tomorrow, today, and yesterday are all the same. So for us, if I'm Joseph, yeah, that's 12 years or however long, it's an eternity, however long I'm in that situation. If I'm dwelling on the situation. But when I'm filled with God's presence and I know that He's present with me, then time doesn't matter. And it's counterintuitive because we're taught to worry. We're taught to, you got to be able to control this thing. You got to be able to make the right choice. You got to be able to do what's right. You got to be able to be worthy of God. And God is simply saying, I'm with you. Like, I'm never going to leave you. I've always got it all. Like we sing, I've got the whole world in His hands. I got it all under control. I got you. Trust me. And I can't even really articulate exactly what that means. I think that for each of us, we have to experience that for ourselves to be able to communicate that to others. And I don't even know if it really can be adequately communicated. It's just that you have to learn and trust in Him in situations where it just doesn't make sense. So that's my
Good
thoughts.
word. Good word. Thanks, Fred. Appreciate you.
Appreciate
Absolutely.
you,
Thank
Fred.
you, guys.
Good seeing you, Bussy.
You too, man.
Very easy enough. I know Fred said a lot of nice things that are encouraging and whatnot, but when the rubber hits the road for you, is it enough? Jerry, that was for you.
For me?
Jerry.
Oh,
That was a lot. But in light of that last statement he made about God's presence, His promise being His presence being His power.
Mhm.
I think there are times it has been enough. Things really didn't pan out the way I would have hoped or expected, but it was enough. And I think what I learned is that sometimes we think the answer to a prayer is a place. So I have I don't know, I have a financial need, so God is gonna figure out a way for me to get that money, get this blessing. Um and He may, but what He would usually bring us to is a process, right? Because he wants to change us, He wants to develop that character within us. So I think the presence is what keeps you mindful of, this is a process. I will come through it. It may not work out or end the way I want it to, but with His presence, the process is gonna make me better anyway. And I'll be in a better position eventually. Yeah.
So what you're
well,
saying is Bob Marley, Three Little Birds. You know,
what?
Yeah.
Don't
Yeah.
worry.
Every little thing.
Every little
that's the one where we go share the little room and the little bed. That's the one. That's the same
Hmm.
song.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
morning.
But it's also what Joseph did, right? It's also being in there, and you know, based upon the story, it's his effect within the place he was showed that he was able to occupy, no matter what. And some people disagree with me. I've had this conversation. When one of the things, I hear the term Uncle Tom, and in reading Uncle Tom's Cabin, Uncle Tom actually depicted. He reminds me of Joseph in that, he wasn't. He was very intentional about the way, even though he's in slavery and he's enslaved and all this type of thing, he was very intentional about the way he conducted himself, given his environment, all that. And the whole thing was like, it wasn't that he was capitulating to the master. I mean, he was literally being like this Christ-like being to everyone, right? And he made the best of his situation, right? And so, and I look at Joseph, almost in the same way of, him occupying in this particular space, whether it's jail or wherever you may be. Like, you control what you can control. Joseph couldn't control where he was. Tom couldn't control where he was, but you got to figure out, and at the end of the day, I think God's presence reflected in how you deal with the situation. And and what you do when you're in that situation, how you make the best of it if you ever get out of it, or until you get out of it.
But so does.
Hold on, Maureen. I just want to put in this comment. Dee says, in my opinion, we need more than his presence. Experiencing him is critical in our relationship with him. Go ahead, Lauren.
Oh, I was saying. Oh, yes, I was saying that. Does knowing he's and knowing that he is enough mean you don't have emotions about what you're going through?
No, I mean I don't, but I don't have emotions. But yes, it doesn't mean I'm not negating that. Not at all.
No, I wasn't saying you were. It was just a thought, because I think there's been a theme this past week for me of like God being an anchor. I don't know why, but and the imagery that keeps coming to mind is a ship, obviously with an anchor in the water, and when the smooth sail, and the anchor's always been there, but when the seas are smooth, you're good. You and Jesus, we tight, everything's all right. And when the waves start going crazy and the ship starts to tossing, and then you're like, wait a minute, and it don't feel like the anchor is there, but the anchor is there, like it's still in the bottom of the ocean, but it doesn't mean the ship's not doing all of its craziness that it's doing. And like I said, it reminded me of my phases. Like I'm like, wait a minute, I don't like what I'm feeling. There's water coming in. Like this thing's about to sink. It's like, but just wait a second. You're not going.
Yeah,
but you're right where you're supposed to be. You're not moving from this space that I want you to be in, regardless of what.
But you see that in the 100 and like those. There's like 150 of those songs that don't rhyme. Like you see that. You
need to quit.
You see the ebb and flow. You see the ebb and flow of that in those songs, right? I mean, it's a constant, God is my rock, God is my. But then it talks and it gets in, like he gets in his feelings a little bit, or whoever is writing it gets in their feelings a little bit about themselves and their situation. But then they actually, okay, now I got out that. But he is, it's that. So all that kind of stuff is normal and natural, right? I think, I'm sure there are plenty of times when Joseph was in tears and crying, right? But control what you can control.
Yeah, it sat differently with me this time. It was nice to see that while God did not remove him from his circumstance, he tried to make him as comfortable in his circumstance as he could make him. But it just made me wonder: am I good if am I good if he's there? Just is knowing that he's there enough for me? Mm-hmm. And I had to wrestle that question, and I think I admitted at one point. No, it's currently not. Or or it wasn't when I started asking that question.
Mm-hmm.
I guess maybe as I started to reflect, I realized, yeah, I think I'll be good. And I started, I think it's the Bob Marley song. It's not She Look Good, it's the next one. It's the next one that talk about, we'll share the shelter of my single bed. As long as you're there with me, I'm good. It don't really matter what our circumstance is.
Mm-hmm.
As long as it's you and me riding together, we can weather any storm. And I thought about it. If I started to think about it from that angle, I can relate to that. I can, then yes. If I value him enough, it could be enough. If I put the focus on, it's not I'm not really concerned about my circumstance. I'm concerned about you being with me in the circumstance. Then I can deal with anything. Then it started to shift a little bit. But
Mm-hmm.
I just wanted to hear what you guys. I didn't hear what you thought, Courtney. Well, is it enough for you currently?
Yeah, I mean, but it's been through experience. Yeah, man. I think I've heard from the word, from close people who've been close in my life talking about their experience with God's presence, and it really took for me to have gone through experiences, and as everyone's saying, things not going the way you would have liked, being in despair, feeling that despair. And then you come to a point, at least for me, within my relationship with the Lord, where it was just like, hey, you know what? I'm gonna serve you regardless of whatever else is going on. And I think that's really what it is. That peace that comes from that, man. Like everything else, the ship could be sinking, and it's just like, all right, as long as I'm
with you.
with you, that's it. As long as you with me, you still talking, we still connected, you still talking to me. That's what's most important. I think some of us can talk about maybe when we turned ourselves away, and to be in a place when you're not hearing from him. I think that's the worst place to be.
Mm.
Right. Like so.
Right.
We had a couple more comments in here from Vanessa. She says, it may not feel like enough while we're going through, but again, it's self and how we feel that makes it feel or look like it's not enough. She goes on to say that part of love, hanging out love in good and bad. There is such beauty in that experience of love, just as grace and mercy.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, man, those were a couple of things that I kind of had in my mind and was thinking about since the last time we read. I have some others, but we kind of at the end of our time today.
I'll throw mine in before you end. I would say for me, at this point, my answer is no. And that's just being honest, because I think I am still working towards thy will be done.
Mm-hmm.
When we've the readings that we've had all these past couple of weeks has been that very question you've asked. Was his presence good enough for Joseph? Was his presence good enough for the children of Israel when he brought them out of Egypt? Was his presence good enough for Paul? Was his presence good enough for Stephen when he was being stoned? All the stuff that we've been reading this week, was his presence good enough? And it just depends on where you are in your relationship with him. I think I am still at thy will be done in my life, so that it's not, I want it to be there, but it's not completely there. If I'm honest, it's not completely there yet, because I still want some things done the way I want some things done. And like Lorraine say, when the ship is tossing, I'm not down with that for too long. And even though I know that you're there, I'm not there yet. So I would have to say, for me, at this time, no, but I'm working on it.
I hear you. Yeah. Not only is the boat tossing, but this ninja sleeping. Yeah? He's sleeping. He ain't even bothered. boy, go sit down somewhere. Like, do you know what is happening right now? Do you have any idea? Yes, I do. Get a pillow. This is like,
Calm
Kendrick, I don't have any feelings for you right now. Go get a
Right.
pillow.
Calm down. Calm down.
Hey man, but in a sense, sometimes I look at it like you have people that are out there that in another ship, and it's just them
Yeah, well,
because they going through some stuff and they don't have what I have to rely on, to hold on to, and it's just them.
mm-hmm.
They trying to figure it out.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just like what we talked about here before. Hey, I want to be in the ship with God. I don't want to be out there by myself. I don't know about everybody else.
Yep. Yep.
But
Yep.
I guess there's peace in the fact that we both on tossing ships, but my ship have a sleeping Jesus who could get up.
Yeah, you're right.
Your ship does not.
Right.
Well,
Right.
and he also, yeah, and there's
Because
a
we're
reason
all
why.
going through stuff. Everybody's going through stuff. Even people that believe and don't believe. But
Mm-hmm.
what's the difference?
My Jesus sleeping.
Which brings us back to the original question: how come we can't empathize with folks? Because we all going through stuff.
Yeah.
All right. We at 3 minutes to 10. I guess we could do our takeaways. For those of you who may not be familiar with what we do here, as you saw, we talked about a number of things, and sometimes the conversation just becomes that, and we don't want it to be that. We want it to be meaningful and practical to life. So we are reflecting on the things that we did talk about that are meaningful enough that we're going to walk away with them and we're going to articulate them so that they can become even more meaningful and be shared between us. So we're asking you, as you have been listening with us, if there's anything that you heard or we said or that you thought about that has value to you that you think you're going to walk away with and can be practically applied for you in how you navigate your life and your walk with Jesus. If you could just type it in the chat as we share ours. So I'm gonna start with you, Lorraine, just because you are top left.
Okay. It was something Bussy said, where he said he sees us as who we are designed to be, but he understands that we're not there yet. That stuck with me because even with the prejudice thing, like he sees those things in us, and slowly through our experiences, those boat shifting, those those waves, those whatever, like he holds up that mirror real quick, like, do you see? can you see it? Okay, like I see you, but do you see you? Like it's like, okay, do you see that we have work we got to do? Okay, well let's work. Let's get this thing done. So that was my takeaway.
Yeah, my takeaway is start to see and value him as a riding partner, and if I process it like that, then no matter what I'm going through, if we together, I'm good. And so it's a shift in focus to, are we doing it? And it really doesn't matter what it is, but we're doing it. And you're doing it with me. So it doesn't matter. And that makes a difference to me. And so that's going to be my takeaway, making that mental shift. Courtney?
My takeaway is just that we're all the same. As you guys mentioned, we're talking about all of these stories, and what I've been reading is you see all these men who God favored, and he entrusted a lot of responsibility on them, and sometimes they overcame, sometimes they fell to temptation and committed sin, and I just see their lives and their faults open to us, and it's for our encouragement and our warning, and I just know I want to overcome. And as we striving together, you know, our story's not done. We can see these, you know, from beginning to end, but our story is not done. I would pray for all of us to overcome.
Word. Cliff?
My takeaway is going to be part of the last thing that we thanks him. It's going to be part of the last part of what you said. And what I'm really taking away with tonight is his presence enough? You really made me think about that at the last part of this. Because like I said, when you look through everything and you look at the stories and you say to yourself, yeah, it should be.
What is it?
Yeah, I'm just going to take that, man.
I got it. Jerry?
Yeah, I side with Courtney. That you know, it really is about the fact that we're all the same, and we're not that, but each of us isn't that special. Yeah, and you know, we really need the same kind of grace we want to extend to ourselves or have extended to us. We really need to be mindful to extend it to others in a real way and not just, you know, hypothetically, right?
No, I wasn't going to question you, Clark.
Thank you, Jerry. Kenneth, you got last.
So I started thinking about what the conversation about empathy, and then I went back while we were talking and looked at that Hebrews 4, and so the Amplified version calls out empathy as a shared feeling, which is emotional. So, and that was the shared feeling Christ had. Yeah, so there's some work. That's my takeaway.
Is apathy an emotion?
Prayerfully.
All right. D says the struggle is real. The enemy traps us in addictions and temptations. I believe God's Son is acquainted with our struggles and emotions and shows us it is possible to overcome. Vanessa says, I am grateful for grace and mercy. I want to be in a position that my life is aligned with God or hang out with God, not a constant phase of Him forgiving me. And Gerald says, God decided that He wanted to be with us, but He's so holy that it can't happen. So He sent Jesus to be His rep. By becoming man, He, through Jesus, could now be in the mix with us in our unholy mess. Word. Thank you guys for the conversation. Thanks especially to Fred for jumping on and giving us some of his time tonight. I appreciate all of you for chiming in and enjoying, participating in the conversation with us, and for all your insights and thoughtfulness. We are on every first and third Friday, so we're on again on the third Friday in February. I think that is February 4 and 7 is 11. February 11, I think, is our next time. No, it's not 11.
No, it'll be the 14th, 18th?
18th, yeah. Yeah, the 18th. That's correct. So we'll be here that Friday. If, like Fred, you'd like to join our conversation, hit us up and we'll see how we can make some space on one of these tiles here. Now that you don't have to actually come to the couch. You can come.
Are we ever doing that again? Never mind. We'll talk afterwards.
I hope so. Although, yeah, it'll be cool to be in person. I would look forward to that. But yeah, we'll talk after. Yeah. So if you haven't already, download the app, read with us. It's easier to follow the conversations that way. But yeah, we are glad to have all of you, and we will be back again at 8 o'clock on the 15th. Until next time, everyone, drink up, drink deeply, and oh yeah, download the app. See, Cliff has it on his phone. Yeah, download the app. Read with us. Just Click
Drink
to
up.
the readings are right there. Till next time, drink up.